Kicked out at 12 because my parents favored my talented twin, but I succeeded with my uncle's support. Now, 10 years later, they want to reconnect and I've turned the tables on them. It's not anything I dispute. She was actually far smarter than I was, and I was unable to keep up. Being from a family of overachievers, I was generally merely ordinary. Merely average was insufficient. My sister and I were to follow in our parents' footsteps and become doctors like my parents were. To be honest, though, I never really cared much about academics and was always more drawn to artistic pursuits. I truly wanted to spend the rest of my life doing that. I used to be under a lot of pressure from them and struggled in school. The fact that my parents made no effort to motivate me to improve did not help either. They would never stop making fun of me and equating me with my twin sister. From a very young age, I was accustomed to that kind of treatment, but over time it just got worse, making it harder for me to focus on anything. By the time I reached middle school at the age of 12, I was failing so many classes because I was performing poorly in every subject. Despite my best efforts, I was not able to improve my score. Due to their ignorance of my home situation, my teachers would frequently complain about me. They merely thought that I was a sloth and wasn't prepared to put in the necessary effort to perform better. Furthermore, I was constantly being compared to my brilliant twin sister at school, who was performing far better than I was. Every single day, my parents would tell me how much they loved my sister and how much of a disappointment I was to them. I would literally cry myself to sleep every night, feeling the need to improve. Things became really bad one evening when they made fun of my grades during dinner. I yelled at them once more, and they grounded me for the following 2 weeks. I made the decision to flee my house without even knowing where I would go. I was obviously unable to travel very far and was only able to get to the neighboring park, where I sat by myself in the pitch darkness, feeling very alone and afraid. It was around 5 in the morning when the police found me there. After they brought me back home, they had to talk to the police. That particular day, they made the decision to send me to live with my uncle and his family in the country where I would grow up. I literally begged my parents not to do that to me and promised that I would be better. When they told me I was going to live with my uncle and his family, they didn't seem to care that I promised not to let them down again or try to flee. They told me they could no longer handle this and that I had let them down. They couldn't devote all of their time to caring for someone who had shown to be worthless when they had another child to look after. I don't even think that was true. Repeatedly, they were all over my sister most of the time until it was time to tease me about how poorly I was doing in school. They hardly gave a damn about me. Nevertheless, I begged them repeatedly not to harm me because I did not want to be apart from them. Most importantly, since my sister was the only kind person in that family, I did not want to be separated from her. They did what they had to do, though, and ignored me. My sister and I had to say goodbye, and they wouldn't even let her support me traveling to my uncle's residence. I was sobbing nonstop for several weeks after arriving, and all I wanted to do was go home. I kept trying to call my parents, and my uncle and aunt were really helpful and supportive during that time because they could understand what I was going through. But my parents did not pick up any of my calls and ignored me. A few weeks later, I decided to accept my fate and just make peace with it. I did stay in touch with my sister. She was the only person who would speak to me, but it had to be done in secret because she did not have a cell phone. So I had to call her from my uncle's phone on the home phone whenever my parents were away. Social media was just getting popular at the time, and thankfully, she would use the computer to talk to me. Occasionally, whenever she would tell me the coast was clear, I would call her, and then we would finally get to talk to each other. My sister and I are still in touch, we love each other, and that's how it's always going to be. She has kept me updated on what has been going on with her and our parents for the past 10 years, and has also told me that our parents were planning on reaching out to me a couple of weeks ago, which is how I was able to prepare myself for that mentally. For the past 10 years, I have had absolutely no contact with my parents. Initially, it was because they had refused to get in touch with me or even speak to me after they had dropped me off at my uncle's house. After I had spent a couple of years at my uncle's place, I was the one who was just not interested in reaching out to them ever again. They had abandoned me. That was the end of the story. Honestly, after I moved in with my uncle and aunt, I was having a much better life. They did not put me under the kind of pressure that my parents had, and I started doing better at school. I was still average academically. I was not the straight-A student that my sister had always been, but at least I was not flunking out of all my classes. My uncle and aunt also allowed me to take part in other activities like school plays and sports, which my parents did not allow me to do because they thought that it would affect my grades badly. I was living my life to the fullest and was very happy with them. When I was living with my parents, I was also forbidden from talking to boys because they thought it would distract me. My uncle and aunt, however, did not have any such ridiculous restrictions and allowed me to talk to whomever I wanted to. I was allowed to bring friends home as well. Coincidentally, that was the reason why I was able to meet my husband, who has been there for me all along. We have been together for the past 7 years. We got together in high school and have been inseparable since then, and even attended the same college. I graduated from college last year, and 1 week after we had graduated together, we got married in an intimate ceremony. Last month, I gave birth to our son. I don't live with my uncle and aunt anymore. My husband and I have a house a few streets away from them, but we do visit them quite frequently, and so do they, to see our son. I'm on maternity leave right now, so I don't have to go back to work for another few weeks. My sister has openly been in touch with me for the past few years because, after she turned 18, she decided that she did not feel the need to hide our bond from our parents because there was nothing they could do. She was the maid of honor at my wedding and is the godmother to my child as well. Last week, while she was visiting us, she told me that our parents planned on paying me a visit. They still did not know that I was married and had a baby because everybody had pretty much stopped speaking to them after they had abandoned me because it was such a heartless thing to do. So they hadn't known anything about my life, and my sister didn't think that it was necessary for her to talk to them about me, so she did not tell them anything, even when they had asked. But after 10 years, they were finally feeling some sort of regret about what they had done all those years ago and were planning on reaching out to me. She felt that it was her duty to tell me about it so I could decide what I wanted to do, and it would not come as a shock to me when they contacted me asking if they could visit me. A couple of days after her visit, my parents indeed reached out to me through social media, asking if they could visit. They did not apologize for anything. It was just a plain message with just the two of them asking if they could visit. Nothing else. I was a little let down by that message because I had genuinely expected them to at least say that they were sorry for the way they had treated me in the past. So for a little while, I was so pissed that I thought about not responding to that message at all. But then I had a better idea. I thought that I would invite them over and show them that place because now I had a great life, and I thought it would be an appropriate idea to let them know how great I was doing without them. So I gave them my address and invited them over for dinner on the weekend. I also invited my uncle, aunt, and my sister, and obviously, my husband and my son were going to be there because that dinner was being hosted at my house. I did not tell my uncle and aunt that my parents were going to be there, so everybody was very surprised to see each other when they showed up at my house last weekend. This was 3 days ago, and I still don't know if I did the right thing or not. Anyway, once everybody was here, things were pretty awkward because, obviously, I had not seen my parents in 10 years, and everybody in the family had cut them off. That included my uncle and my aunt, since they did not want anything to do with my parents either. The reason behind that was that my parents had promised that not only would they support me financially for as long as I was living with my uncle, but they would also keep in touch so that I did not become lonely and make sure that my emotional needs were satisfied as well. But they only lived up to half of that promise. They did give money every month, but they did not care to keep in touch with me and were just pleased to get rid of me. That's not the agreement that my uncle had signed up for, and he was sad that my parents were abandoning me emotionally. But he did not mind taking care of me, so he was the one who had spoken up for me and told the rest of the family what my dad was doing, and everybody else cut my father off for that reason. So that led to a lot of bad blood between the two, but my dad still continued to send money until I reached 18. After that, there was no communication between them either. After greeting each other, we were scheduled to eat dinner together, but I decided to offer a toast before that. As if things were not awkward enough, I chose to lean into it and make it even worse because I wanted my parents to feel terrible and make them feel bad. So I went up and started making a speech about how great the last 10 years of my life had been compared to the first 12. I made it out to be a speech to my uncle and aunt because, honestly, they had done a lot for me over the last decade, and I don't think that I would have been able to make it this far in life without them. I also thanked my husband for being there with me all along the road, and my sister for never giving up on me in spite of everything that was going on. Very explicitly, I decided to snub my parents in my speech because I did not have anything to thank them for, and they sensed it because, throughout my speech, they kept their eyes downcast and did not even say a word. Once I was done with my speech, I decided to rub it in even more and turn to my parents and informed them that I was finally ready to present them to my new family. They were startled to the very core when I revealed that because I didn't think they had been expecting me to say something like that. As soon as I mentioned that this was my new family, my mother fell into tears and practically made a dash for it. All of this would have been a lot better without all this fuss. After they had left, we enjoyed a quiet and uncomfortable supper together. Dessert was so heavy that I was relieved that no one stayed for it. Though I did not think what I had done was right, I did not like my parents. My sister and my husband believed that I went too far and that I shouldn't have even replied to my parents' messages if I didn't want to communicate with them. I haven't had a chance to speak with my uncle and aunt yet, but it was unnecessary to offend them in this way. I feel bad for asking my parents to supper and then making fun of them. Update. Okay, enough with the remarks. There has been some disagreement thus far on whether or not I should apologize to my parents, but everyone seems to think that I should at least speak with my uncle and aunt because my parents are still up for debate. I made the decision to get in touch with my uncle today. A week has passed since I hosted the family dinner, and due to our hectic schedules, both mine and theirs, we haven't been able to speak much during the last several days. Furthermore, I believe that the uneasiness persisted as a result, and we avoided speaking to one another so as not to cause discomfort. However, I called my uncle today to handle the issue, and before he could say anything, I simply apologized for not even warning my parents in advance about the dinner invitation. He admitted to being a little taken aback by what I had done, but he soon moved past it. I was really sad after that night, and he acknowledged it, so he hadn't checked in with me to see if I was okay. He assured me that even if things had become tense that day, it was all in the past and had no significance. I apologized to my aunt over the phone after that, and her response was the same. I no longer feel as guilty because I have apologized to them both and put things behind me. I don't think I owe my parents an apology because, after everything I endured during my upbringing, I don't think anyone could possibly feel sorry for them for the way I behaved. I see no cause to apologize to them as they haven't done so yet. Since my husband had suggested that I apologize to them, I also talked to him about it. I told him that while what I had done at the dinner was inappropriate, the way I had been treated in the past was also unacceptable. He didn't press it because it appeared like he understood where I was coming from. My sister was a little dubious about it when I told her the same thing. However, she then informed me that ultimately it was up to me to decide. It was me who had suffered an injustice, so whatever I chose to do was appropriate. She also hasn't been able to contact our parents. They've been eerily silent for the past week. But I assume they are just keeping low for the time being. Without a doubt, they'll get in touch with me once more and try to start a commotion or demand an apology. Second update. Hello. I simply wanted to clear the air on this. Even if she is my sister, she isn't attempting to be diplomatic by maintaining a positive relationship with our parents. That's okay with me. Therefore, it doesn't have to be that enormous. I've been observing in the comments area. She was very little, but she also knows that what they did to me was terrible. It's not as if she could have objected and defended me. She didn't like the notion at the time, but since we were so young, it didn't really matter what we thought. Thus, she was powerless to intervene. That's enough, though. She tried her hardest and stayed in contact with me. She doesn't want to leave our parents because she would feel bad about it, and they are growing older, which is why she keeps in touch with them. It doesn't get any simpler than that. It's not all that profound. Don't accuse her of anything, please. It is wholly superfluous. Furthermore, we are quite fond of one another, so we don't believe the remarks made about her are accurate. Let's talk about what transpired. As I had previously stated, I was very certain at the very end that my parents would not sit back down and accept what I had done. Simply put, they are not the type of individuals that give up easily. I was therefore ready for some kind of reprisal on their part, and tonight, 10 days after I had hosted the meal, it finally happened. They made the decision to discuss the incident in public and even wrote a lengthy article about it on social media. That surprised me a little because they don't really have a lot of activity on social media. However, they chose to share about this particular occurrence on social media, and just as I had anticipated, it was an extremely biased post in which they only talked about how wounded they were and made no mention of their past transgressions. To be honest, if the post hadn't been addressed to our family, I would not have given a damn. They were very cunning about the whole thing and decided to tag my husband and my coworkers as well, even though he had nothing to do with this whole mess. Since no one in my family likes my parents for what they did in the past by leaving me and other things, it's clear that my coworkers were unaware of my difficult relationship with my parents and my past with them. They were all a little surprised to be included in that post, and they started ringing my phone nonstop since I wasn't at work due to my maternity leave. I clearly didn't know what they had posted. In addition, I don't really check social media that often because I'm generally spending time with my baby. But I was astonished when they began to message me encouraging me to look up what had happened online. I had not been expecting any of it, so I was not sure how to respond. I was quite certain that they had followed me on social media to locate my coworker account, as I had tagged them in several of the photos I had taken with them. Thus, that's most likely what they've been up to for the last week, stalking me in an attempt to destroy my reputation by figuring out who I had friends with at work. I saw that post, though, after a few minutes of astonishment. I made the decision to speak up and let people know how things really were. There was nothing that I was hiding in this scenario. I was the victim. Although what occurred at the meal was inappropriate, it was not unjustified. I proceeded to transcribe the complete event that transpired, detailing how they dropped me off at my uncle's house years prior and then declined to communicate with me. Furthermore, they have not offered me an apology, not even after reaching out, and they hadn't apologized when they arrived at my house. Had they taken that action, I might have thought twice before saying what I said. Nevertheless, I don't think what I did was incorrect. I explained the same thing to my coworkers who were mentioned in the post as well. On my parents' behalf, I apologized to them. It was incredibly foolish of my parents to get my coworkers involved in our turmoil, and they didn't need or deserve to be involved at all. Obviously, I'm quite enraged because they could have simply targeted me and kept things professional, but it's disgusting to draw my colleagues into this. I've been holding out for my husband to return home. He had informed me that he had a crucial meeting with a client today, so I didn't want to disturb him at work with this. If not, I would have gotten in touch with him and informed him of this, but really, I can handle this on my own. It's only a small-time drama. Furthermore, my sister, with whom I have already spoken, believes that our parents are currently acting insane. They'll probably lose it all and be unable to handle the contempt, and that, in my opinion, is precisely what took place. Even still, nothing can ever excuse this kind of conduct. I haven't even mentioned this to my aunt or uncle since I know they will react strongly, and I don't want to bother them with it at this time since they are both quite busy at work. Update 3. Since my previous post, a few hours have gone by. Right now, it is evening, and everyone is at my place, my sister, my uncle, and my aunt. We are merely attempting to come up with a solution, as my spouse has also returned from his job. Despite what many of you have said, I do not wish to see a lawyer. I truly don't have the time or energy to deal with that. After filing a petition, it's simply not required. For as long as feasible, I want to handle things directly and avoid getting lawyers involved. Naturally, they won't remove that post. After that, I might need to contact a lawyer and launch a defamation action or do whatever else is necessary. We will, however, make every effort to have it taken down. In the meantime, they've received numerous texts telling them to take it down, but they don't seem to care about any of it. I have no idea what's going through their minds because they haven't even replied to our communications. At least everyone who views that post will learn the truth because they haven't bothered to remove my comment, and a sizable number of people have seen it. I don't look good in that post, so it's not good for me that it's gaining a lot of momentum. For some reason, not only have a few of my acquaintances seen the post and are contacting me about it, but my coworkers who have been tagged have also seen it. It may have been on their feed because I was also tagged in the post, but I have since deleted the tag, and it continues to appear on people's feeds. I assumed there had to be a bug with the software, but it's just not user-friendly enough for me. People keep asking me about it, and I'm getting tired of responding to them because they can just read my comment and go on. But for some reason, they feel the need to repeatedly ask me questions directly. Sincerely, I simply want this to stop. It's becoming really frustrating. I'm just crossing my fingers that HR doesn't have to get in touch with me because it could be problematic for me. Furthermore, I truly don't want my parents to damage my reputation at work. They're not replying to me, so my family and I are still working to find a means to persuade them to remove this. That might work because my sister informed me she was going to beg my parents to take it down in person when she visited them. We will be forced to pursue them with legal representation if they continue to fail to comply, and since it will need a lot of work on my part, I sincerely hope that it doesn't have to come to that. All I want to do right now is spend time with my son. I'm on maternity leave to do that, not to put up with their antics. 4th update. Hello. So, my sister spent an hour visiting my parents today. Just 30 minutes ago, she informed me that our parents were quite furious, which is why they posted that post and tagged my coworkers and me. Until then, I had no idea what was going on. I was right about their internet snooping. They had managed to locate my colleagues and their social media profiles. It was a bit unsettling of them, but whatever. Actually, that's the least of my worries at the moment. Nevertheless, she informed me that after a lengthy conversation, they had agreed to remove the article provided I first apologized to them. I informed my sister right away that I would not be participating because I did nothing wrong, and I would stand by that. Thankfully, she was aware that I would not be apologizing. She then informed my parents that I would never, under any circumstances, appear to be sorry for anything I hadn't even done wrong. I was going to pursue them with a lawyer, which would not be good for them, so they could just save that time and effort and remove that post. Following nearly an hour of deliberation, they ultimately agreed to remove the post and call it quits. However, they have also instructed my sister to inform me that they are excluding me from both their inheritance and lives. None of that actually matters to me. All I want is for the post to be removed. Their inheritance is theirs to keep private. I don't think it's important in terms of our careers. My spouse and I are doing fairly well, and we both realize that even in the unlikely event that we are not wealthy, that's okay with me. I don't have to depend on them financially. At least my sister claims that she said the same thing to them. At least now they know how I feel about this. That taken care of, I'm going to enjoy the remainder of my maternity leave with my son and make the most of it before returning to work.